Clive, we're on air. Thank you so much for helping me with these. Don't forget, guys, paid reviews is what keeps the oil in this wheel called the Archie Luxury channel going. Paid reviews. Remember, like, subscribe, tell your friends. And also, guys, don't forget to get a paid review, collection review. It helps me stay full-time on YouTube. Man cannot live on Google Ads alone. And
now, isn't it even possible for someone to get a paid review when a live stream, so a face-to-face live review?
Yes, we can do a face-to-face live review. $40. $40. $40, guys. You can be live. It can go down in history. You can keep it forever. You can share it with your friends. You can upload it to your channel. Clive, one of your topics here is, this is from Ben in Salem, Oregon. Salem, that's where they used to burn witches, wasn't it?
Massachusetts, different Salem.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Not to be confused with Winston-Salem.
Okay. I need your opinion on thin gold dress watches. For some reason, I am obsessed by this genre. I am 30 years old. When I was young, I remember being fascinated and curious why grown men sometimes wore these very feminine-looking gold watches. How could they wear them with a straight face? What was their excuse? I know this style was popular in the 70s before I was born, when men had hairy chests and gold medallions to match. Could you please tell me more about these days? Very, very, very good, Clive. Interestingly, I noticed Uncle Suckerhorn proudly wears a thin Longines a la Grande, I believe, complete with gold pinky ring. Interesting, in my research, I found that this style seems to be popular amongst gamblers. He goes on to say, but even my President Trump wore an 18K ellipse while playing golf. I don't think it worked much longer after he played golf wearing it. That's a very delicate, that's a very delicate watch to do that with. All in all, I'm aware that most of the obscure gold watches I see from the 70s and 80s were really gold-plated. Quartz, dog shit. Yet some of them were fine movements. Omega seems to produce some of the more common ones that are still functional and up for sale today even. Mm-hmm. Would they be worth buying, especially if they were solid gold? And don't see many of these gold dress watches on wrists anymore, only rarely. Usually now they're worn by very old gentlemen. If I see one, I have the urge to rush up and shake him violently and yell, "What are you thinking? It's so impractical. It's so dainty. It only has 2 hands and no date." So, but I digress. This guy's got a Movado, but he would have liked to. He likes to pretend it's a Piaget. In the end, it's possible that deep down I may view watches the same way you did, as jewelry. Nothing more, nothing less. What do you think? Tell me, Clive, thin dress watches. What's the story?
Well, okay. It used to be back in the day, youngsters. If you really wanted to demonstrate your technical and engineering badassery, you would try to make things smaller. It takes a lot. It's a lot harder to make a watch movement and fit it inside of a 34 millimeter case than a Panerai case, for instance. You know, Panerai, the whole reason behind Panerai is it was quick and it was cheap, and it's just like, let's just make this big freaking watch that they could loom it up so they could read it underwater, and we'll just import a bunch of these Rolex pocket watch movements, throw it in, call it a day. Mm-hmm. But it used to be the smaller and thinner the watch was, and still make it functional, that showed that you were a better engineer and a better watchmaker.
Very, very true point. It was actually very difficult to make these things thin. It's like trying to put me into a tutu. It's just very hard to do. Engineering wise, there's too much junk to put in there, isn't there, Clive?
Oh, there is. But eventually they fell out. Eventually, fell out of fashion. It fell out of favor. But and this is one of the things. This is probably the cheapest watch I own.
Yep. Show it, Clive.
Well, it's a Sigma. It's from the 60s. Sigma is just a little obscure Swiss brand. To me, it's kind of almost like it's trying to copy a Calatrava.
Actually, I'll tell you what it looks to me like. AP had a very similar model like that. AP. I had an AP that looked very similar to that. And that is, your one is not gold plated. That is solid gold, isn't it?
That is rose gold. That is correct.
How much did you pay for this piece here?
$500.
That's an amazing buy. And it's an automatic one, yours, is it? Automatic?
It is not automatic with a date, for Pete's sake. And here's the funny part. When the date changes, it has this soft little thump. You can actually hear it change the date. It's almost reassuring. Thump. Mm. And so far, I've taken it's from the early 60s. I've had Fulton's over here, the watch hospital by the hacienda, check it out, and they say it's Schmicko.
Schmicko.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
and the nice thing is that it's 34 millimeter, which seems absurdly small, but I think, I've said this over and over again. I will continue to say it. The problem with small watches isn't really necessarily the size; it's that the contrast sucks. This one, I can read this one just fine, even though it's 34. And I tell you what, if you want to go, rose gold, chicks really dig it. I can't really put this. If I'm around an ex, I really can't take this thing off, or around any female, because they'll snatch it up and put it on, try it, and la la la. And then I have to almost tackle them to get away from them.
Wow.
But yeah.
That's a great story, Clive.
Yeah, I actually got it from the last Sigma dealer here in Oklahoma City.
I'm really impressed that you've got chicks that actually want to hang out with you. That impresses me a lot.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. And believe it or not, they're actually chicks. I check. I really, really do. You've got me paranoid.
That's amazing, Clive.
Even if they're not Asian, I'm paranoid. But yeah.
That's what a great story.
And actually, I've figured out. Well, never mind. I guess that's really more of a sucker horn topic. But anyway.
Yep. So, Clive.
But like I said, is there anything wrong with? For the price, I actually think it's one of the. It might be one of the best values for the money watch. Could I turn around and sell it as easily as a Rolex? Probably not. No, it's so cheap. I could probably put solid gold watch and someone would buy it just for the gold value. But the condition it's in, how well it runs, I actually think it's a great little thing for the money. Now, much more than 34 millimeters. Let's not get stupid. But if you find something and it speaks to you, especially for that price, why not?
That's a very good point. If it speaks to you for that price, why not? Just keep it, enjoy it, don't you think?
Absolutely.
You can't complain about that. That's amazing bang per buck, isn't it, really?
Well, and like I said, in the sucker horn, the things with him, he's not just gold school with all the idols behind him. By the way, my personal theory is that those are idols that Thai women bring to him. Those are actually idols to him.
Oh,
and as a courtesy, he puts them on display. But so he's not just gold school; he's also old school, because this is the sort of thing. A little dated, but everyone talks about Mad Men and Dan Draper. Dan Draper would have worn a watch like this.
Yes, he would have, wouldn't he?
Or like sucker horn.
Yes. Yeah. And this is the whole thing. What killed it, in my opinion, was that when quartz came out, it was no longer hard to do. Oh, okay. quartz, once the original quartzes had a big thick movement in them, but then eventually they narrowed quartz down to a very small movement. It was nothing special then. It wasn't hard to do it, so it kind of lost its thunder, so to speak, which is I kind of think, well, when everyone could do it, it's not a cool party trick anymore, is it? It's like walking.
No.
Hey, everyone walks. I can walk. What's so funny about that? You know, you know what? That's kind of what happened, isn't it?
Yeah, this one actually has what's called an FEF movement of some. I can't remember the exact nomenclature behind it, but yeah, not bad, respectable.
Wow, that's amazing. That is amazing.
So yeah, so where'd they go? They eventually lost favor. They lost popularity. It became fins, like another thing in the 60s, fins on cars. They gradually got smaller, well, larger and larger until they disappeared. Small watches.
Yeah, it's kind of a sad thing, Clive. It's kind of a sad thing to see them disappeared like that. But you know, I mean, let's be honest there, Clive. You can't live in the past forever, can you?
Yeah, but you can wear a watch that came from the past.
Tell me this. You know, I had my Vacheron. My Vacheron was a very, very I actually quite liked that watch there. I ended up selling it because I got a great offer on it, and that was a nice watch. But they are quite inexpensive because they're about 32, 33, 34 mil.
Mm-hmm.
They are considered a wee bit small, you know.
Well,
and that's what kind of kills them a bit, is that because they are so small like that, they've it's kind of killed them, hasn't it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, because it's no longer manly. And as for the Sigma, I actually think the straight lugs on it makes it appear a little bit bigger than it actually is.
Yeah, and you know the secret too is also have a very thin strap on it. If you want a big chunky strap, it looks crap. It's got to be a very, very thin strap. And I think there's an elegance to it. You remember in the 60s, they used to have cars. You might have had a big American tank, but you had that really thin Bakelite steering wheel.
Right. Yes.
That was kind of the fashion then, wasn't it? It was, look.
Easier to grip.
Are they necessarily going to be value? Are they going to come back into fashion? I don't think they will. Ultra thin watches have come back in, but they're making them more 39, 38, 40 mil sort of size. So I don't think the 33 size will ever come back in, I'm afraid.
Actually, I was going to compare it to my semi-bubble back from the late 50s, and it's quite a bit.
That's the whole reason why ultra thin was so cool, because to make a automatic watch, it had to be thick because of the rotor and all this stuff there.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it was so cool to have a really thin watch. It was like a magic trick. And when quartz came out and really hit early 80s, and they could make things so thin, it lost its magic power.
So quartz is the Penn and Teller of the horological movement.
Yes. So the question he asked there, look, what were they thinking? Well, that was just fashion, because it was just fashion of the time. And what were they thinking? Well, they didn't know any better. People were thinner. You got to remember, there was a thing called, let's look at watches. When did they come out? Well, they came out, watches for men really came out in World War I, because it was better. Before World War I, it was considered sissy to have a watch. You had a gentleman had a pocket watch.
Right.
But that changed in World War I, because it was better to live than to die. You know, be shot because you're looking at the time, you know.
Correct.
So that's when watches, so after World War I, watches became accepted for men, right?
Right.
Then what happens is, you got to remember, you had a thing called
World War II?
No, very inconvenient in the 1930s, called a depression. People didn't have money for fancy watches. Then you had World War II. And one thing about this is, I don't know if you can mention this, World Depression and World War, there's not an abundance of food. So people were thinner. Okay.
Right.
KFC and McDonald's hadn't been franchised yet. Popeyes was just an idea, you know, it hadn't even been thought of.
But, however, they did have fried chicken in Kentucky at that time.
Yes, they did. You told me the story. It was the slaves who.
No. Not quite back that far.
Okay.
Segregation, Jim Crow, post-slavery. The reason behind fried chicken is fried chicken was a lot more portable. It was easier to fry it up that way and carry in a sack, because if you were black going from one town to another, you didn't know if you could get accommodation or a place to stay or a place to eat in the next town. You might go 2 towns. You might go 2 towns only over, and it's whites only.
Very, very hard times indeed. What an awful period of time. And then what happened is, after World War II, then the thin dress watches came out because it was something they aspired to, because supplies were coming in. It was a tricky thing to do. But then the 70s, quartz hit, and the rest, as we know, is history. Look, the interesting thing is, you know, the first Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, that had a very thin, ultra-thin movement in it. Even though the watch is kind of a chunky watch,
right?
It had a ultra-thin movement in it. So, look, in many ways there, the ultra-thin movements, I kind of, look, I got to be honest with you now, we don't live in the 90s. Any analog watch, any watch on your wrist that's not a you know, an Apple Watch is a good thing. So I say now, you can wear whatever you want. You want to wear a sub with a suit? Do it. You want to wear a GMT sports watch with a tuxedo? Do it. Do it.
If you're some skinny little hipster like Christian from Theo and Harris, happy birthday, by the way, Christian. And you can get away.
Happy birthday, Christian. He's a great guy. I like him.
He's only 22. God damn it.
Yeah.
But like, if you get away with wearing a little skinny ass vintage watch and make it look non-ironic, why not?
Hey, I got to tell you, I went through that phase. It was, the only problem is, let me tell you this, the only problem with these ultra thin watches, they tend to have very limited waterproofing and protection. Right. So if you're in a rainy climate, they can fog up. You got to be. They are delicate. They are delicate watches, okay? They have limited sort of protection. That's how they make them so thin. It's physics. You can't beat physics. But Clive, it's great pleasure having you here. I'm going to wrap this one up. I got some breakfast that's just arriving. And Clive.
Oh, what are you having? I always love to see the backdoor deliveries you get from Pizza Pagoda for breakfast.
Okay, there we go. That's the breakfast. I'm on a diet today, Clive.
I have been watching this show called What the Health.
Yes.
On Netflix. Do you have Netflix in Australia?
No.
You don't have Netflix in Australia?
I somehow don't think that's a very diet breakfast. Do you? Be honest with me. Now, Clive, I'm going to scoff this down in a couple minutes. Do you want to do another show, or you've had enough?
Absolutely. One of the thing that I took away from What the Health is basically the World Health Organization qualifies processed meats as Category 1 carcinogen, which is basically cigarettes.
Oh, this is not processed meats. This is fresh bacon. That's not processed meats. I don't eat processed meat.
Bacon is processed.
Okay. Clive, I got to go. I'll be back soon. We'll do another show, okay?
Outstanding.
Cool.